Okay, this video is going to get us started with chapter 3. And this particular chapter is going to be about programming the computer to make decisions. So write decisions up here. We are going to learn how to write code that will tell the computer how to make a decision in particular instances. Now this is going to give you more flexibility, kind of extend your ability to write different types of code that you weren't able to write before. And so this will make it a little more interesting. It'll also, this is kind of the beginning of being able to write code that play games, because a lot of times games are based on decision-based programming. So anyway, so here's the situation. What we did is we had a little demonstration in front of the class, a little role play. And so what happened was we took, I had a student come up, and so here's the student. And this particular student I had stand in front of the whiteboard. And so here's me here with my new do, and I had some pens in here. And so we demonstrated the idea of making a decision, so making a choice. And so what I told the student is, if Mr. Pfaff gives you the blue erase marker, then I would like you to write your name on the board. Otherwise, draw a circle on the board. All right, so that's what I said to do. So in other words, this student was going to have to make a choice, just like you're going to write code that has the computer make a choice. And so, so what I did is I took the red one and I gave it to her. And so here she's got it. And so she looked at it, and as she started to go to the board with it, I said stop, and I asked the students in the class, I go, well, what is the question that this person or this student was asking? What should that student be asking after I gave her the red marker? Now keep in mind, the fact that I gave her the red marker and she looked at the red marker and saw that it was red, that's kind of represents the code where we get user input. And so a lot of times you're going to write code where you have the computer make a decision based on the user's input. Well, that's what's happening here. And so she looks at this, and so I asked, well, what is this student asking in order to make a decision on whether to write her name, or draw a circle? And actually, students had a difficult time with this, except for one class. The student gave the answer pretty quickly. And so here's the idea. The question that the student should be asking is is this a blue marker? Because it is, I thought I got this, I guess I didn't. So, wow, that's really weird. All right. So the question is did Mr. Pfaff give me a blue dry erase marker? And so, of course, the question is no. All right, so therefore, since I didn't give her the blue one, she chose to skip this one and instead to draw a circle on the board. So she drew a circle, a red circle, on the board. So she skipped this and did this. All right, so that is representative of how the computer is going to make a decision. And so what happens is, well, what we have to look at for this is, what is the condition in this particular demonstration. What is the condition on which the student is basing her decision on whether to do this or to do this? And that would be, the condition is, did Mr. Pfaff give me a blue marker? That's the condition. Did Mr. Pfaff give me a blue marker? And based on that decision, or based on whether this was true or false, is how the student made the decision to draw the circle on the board. It says here, B, the decision to write your name or draw a circle is based on whether the condition is true or false. So did Mr. Pfaff give me a blue marker? The answer was no. And so because it was no, she drew a circle on the board. And there is no need, in C, there's no need to say, well, if Mr. Pfaff gives you a non-blue marker. So we don't go here, otherwise, if Mr. Pfaff gives gives you a non-blue marker. See, that's not necessary to say that. And that's gonna relate to what we're doing in our code, because really the otherwise is a word that we understand, but the word really in code, Java code, is going to be else. And you're going to find out that else does not have a condition. All right, the if statement will have a condition on which the computer will make a decision. The else will be just like, well, if this is false, then we're going to go ahead and do the else part. That's basically the idea. All right, so we'll just take a look at a couple of things here. Just a note of interest is that we are going to attempt to follow the textbook. I'm used to writing my notes not based on totally on the textbook, and so I'm trying to do that. So we're going to actually use a PowerPoint that the textbook author produced. And so what we're doing is we're dealing with the if statement. A computer program needs to make decisions based on input or circumstances. So that's what we did. The input here was the red marker, and or certain circumstances that will happen. For example, buildings often skip the 13th floor, and so then the elevator should too. So the 14th floor is really the 13th floor, and so the 15th floor is actually the 14th floor. And so so every floor that's above 12 is really whatever floor you're going to minus 1 in actuality. That's actually the story, or the number of stories up to that point. So the two keywords in the if statement are if and else. If and else. And the if statement allows a program to carry out different actions depending on the nature of the data to be processed. So just like we're going to use an if statement like in our demonstration, where it's going to allow us to carry out an action depending on one thing. So whether we're going to write our name on the board or draw a circle. Okay, so we go over here. Here's the actual code. This is the actual code that you should be familiar with, start getting familiar with. And that is here. Now, first of all, we have what's called a flowchart. Now, what we did is we did a demo, a kind of a role play, and that's one way that we demonstrated this going on. But a flowchart is an excellent way to show what's happening with the compiler. So the compiler then, let's say, gets the input from the user, and the user types a 17. Now the compiler is going to go over here and go, okay, well, now I have a decision to make. I need to look at my condition. If the floor is greater than is 17 greater than 13, Well, yes, it is. So therefore, it's going to choose this fork in the road because that's true. And it's going to go over here and take that 17 and going to subtract 1. So that really the actual floor, that's really 16 stories high. It's not 17 stories high. All right, now let's say that the user or the compiler gets a 10. So it comes here and it's fork in the road. Go, well, is 10 greater than 13? Well, no, and that's false. So it goes over on this side, and then it goes in here and says, well, the actual floor is whatever floor you're on, and so the actual floor is 10. It's actually the 10th floor is 10 stories high. And so this is how they write that code, is we have what's called an if statement. This is an if statement right here, all the way from the if to the final curly brace. And so as you can tell then, this is the condition. This is, did Mr. Pfaff give me a blue marker? This is asking, is the floor I'm on, is it the floor number, is it greater than 13? So is 17 greater than 13? Well, if it is, then what we want to do is we want to do this. And then we'll skip this, just like the student skipped writing her name on the board, and she went to drawing a circle. So now if the floor you're on is actually 10, well, 10 is greater than 13, and that's false, and so it will actually skip the first one and do this. So yes, the actual floor is going to be 10. This is actually 10 stories high. All right, so that's how we're going to write that code. And so the last thing to look at here, well, yeah, is that that sometimes there aren't two alternatives, that you just only have one thing, so just one branch, so to speak. So if the floor is greater than 13, then it'll remove or take one away, and so that's what this code is. We'll talk about that at another time. But sometimes it's not necessary to have an else, and we'll learn more about that as we go on. Right now we'll go one more, and this is what we're going to look at in our next class. Is we are going to begin to see the different parts of the if statement, and we're actually going to look at this in our notes. I have this in our notes, this as being part of an actual program, an entire program, and you can see that if statement in here, and then this print statement is being based on the actual floor is actually assigned a particular value at some point in that if statement. And so this is something that we'll talk about later, but this is how it's set up. So that's it for the introduction to the if statement.